The 1D barcode, especially that UPC, it is 50-year-old tech, and it's only capable of delivering 12 numbers. Benefit of 2D is all that additional data. It's more modern in a lot of other technical ways, but it basically is a major unlock for connected packaging to get us from where we are today all the way through to one barcode that essentially can fulfill all of the future needs.
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chains, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reid.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today. Are you familiar with Sunrise 2027? Did you know that industry has already set a transition date to accepting 2D barcodes at the point of sale? That's right. We're going to begin this journey in 2027, and that means we need to get prepared now. And the preparation happens on both sides. It happens at the retailer for the point of sale transaction, but it also happens at the brands. And there's a lot more that goes into this than you think of, but there are also a lot of benefits to moving towards 2D barcodes. And that's why industry has come together and we've set Sunrise 2027. Our guest today is Ned Mears. He's the Senior Director of Global Standards here at GS1 US, and he's been working on this for quite some time. He is a fountain of information and experience and has some specific details on how to handle certain things and certain things to watch out for. So let's jump right into the conversation.
Ned, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and all of the work that you lead here at GS1 US.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I feel like it's been forever since I've seen the two of you. So I'm on the standards team here at GS1 US, right? Our role within the organization is to get involved wherever like the rubber meets the road of implementing our standards, right? So you can sort of think of us as like sales engineers, right? Or solution consultant within the sort of GS1 universe. Just whenever someone has questions about how do I actually make this work? How do I apply it? How does my software, how does my technology make the standards come to life? We usually get involved to provide assistance. And the big topic, the big chunk of work that I have is all around 2D barcodes and 2D at point of sale. So our Sunrise 2027 initiative, working with all of those brands and retailers, the technology companies to bring that whole vision to life. That's basically my full-time job here at GS1 US. And just to give a little more context, my background, I was actually just catching up with someone on the partnerships team here. Prior to working at GS1 US, I worked for a solution provider. So I always had GS1 US contacts on the partnership team and phone a friends on the standards. But the relevant background of GS1 US is at a solution provider that was all about the RFID space and retail tech. So barcodes, labels, RFID tags, variable data management, all of that type of fun stuff that I gladly don't have to do anymore, right? That's what prepared me for where we are today at GS1 US.
We're thankful that you're with us here, Ned, for this conversation, but also being a part of the standards team and helping our members and our partners better understand the best way to implement. So we're going to talk a little bit about Sunrise 2027 today, which is 2D barcodes. I always try to remind people that it's sunrise. Most people always associate it with, oh, you're sunsetting that? No, we're starting. This is the beginning of the journey. And so we have the year of 2027 is when we're really getting industry to start to implement 2D barcodes and at point of sale and getting it out and getting consistent. And this is a Herculean effort. So before we jump into this, can you just kind of give us a definition of a 2D barcode and how it differs from the traditional UPC that everyone's used to when we go to the grocery store and do self-checkout and it goes beep. If you can kind of just give us, and we're going to into the rest of it, but let's start there.
Cool. Yeah. And you're right too, that like, look at the whole big thing, the whole big project. It's a crazy ambitious. The scope is every consumer product globally. Like it's insane to be honest, right? Which is why I'm just so glad to take it on. I'm glad that we're doing that work here at GS1 US, right? But it's huge. It is huge. But the real basic thing to understand, right? The fundamentals of the barcodes and everything else is 1D versus 2D, right? That looks at it a little bit from a technical layer, but a linear barcode or a 1D like the UPC, you can imagine it's just straight lines. They look like fence posts or bars or something to that effect. And basically, when you read it, you're only getting information across one of those dimensions. So you're looking for black or white, and the scanner is interpreting the differences as data, but it's only across it like horizontally. Picture that laser line across a 1D barcode. That's where all the data is coming through. It doesn't matter if it's the top, the bottom, the middle, wherever it pulls it through. And on a 2D code, so QR code, data matrix, we can get into more detail about that. They usually look like a square.
But there are multiple types. There are multiple types of 2D codes, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, we really simplify it down to 1D like a UPC, 2D, most commonly a QR code. But there's multiple types across of 1D and 2D, right? But a lot of nuance in tech for sure. But with a 2D code, you can read data across and up and down. It's usually in a square. And instead of straight lines, you have squares that we call modules. So the data is encoded in a bit more of a complex way, which gives you more data overall that the barcode can give back to the computer scanner.
Yeah, and I think the big differentiator is that it's more data that can be shared. And with that more data, we can webify interfaces and reference databases and register. It just gives you a lot more flexibility, serialization, like all these things that were, something that we've been using for 50 plus years. There's a little bit better way of doing it. And now's the time, Sunrise 2027, to transition.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the big unlock, like you said, is just access to be able to put more information in there. Like you said, the 1D barcode, especially that UPC, it's on every product that we look at. Most people just don't even notice it. It's set it and forget it, right? But it is 50-year-old tech, and it's only capable of delivering like 12 numbers. That's it. And even with that is still this fundamental brick in the foundation of all retail technology, all supply. It's digital identity that every system knows how to read and interpret. But yeah, it's just 12 digits in a 50-year-old like interface. So benefit of 2D is all that additional data. It's more modern in a lot of other technical ways, but it basically is a major unlock for connected packaging, right? To get us from where we are today of just a beep at checkout and a price lookup all the way through to one barcode that essentially can fulfill all of the future needs, the regulations, mandates, increased consumer demand for information. All of that starts to unlock if we hit all the milestones towards that sort of future vision. And that's where 2027 is the major milestone that we have in front of us. Yeah.
I was just going to talk about or ask you about with these different use cases. And you talked about federal regulations or recalls. You could do recipes. It could be something as simple as recipes. And everything that you've seen so far with different organizations rolling towards either Sunrise or some other use of a 2D barcode. What's kind of a milestone that tells you the industry is making progress? And is there any lessons learned so far, or is it too early?
Yeah, I think the best way to look at that. So like for Sunrise 2027, that is not a destination. It really is a milestone itself. That is a step in this journey. So getting retail technology to be capable of reading those 2D codes. So just like what Reid said, like it's a Sunrise. It's additive to retail tech. It's an additional set of capabilities for those POS scanners. And the reason that is so important and it's so narrowly defined that way is the technology companies were sort of a first piece. Are they capable of this? Is this going to happen? We worked with them. We engaged. We checked, verified, and certified, et cetera. And once retailers make that commitment, implement those changes, bring to life that capability, it really solidifies 2D codes and really GS1 Digital Ink, the web version of that product identity. It solidifies that as really the new supply chain foundation for consumer products. Right. So we are really measuring, especially we're in 2026, 2027 is right around the corner, retailers that are coming online, that are developing plans for this, or that are going to come forward with commitments with what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, and then coming live with the capability. That is the major milestone. That's the big benchmark. That's what we're really tracking everything against. Right. There's more to say about that on the brand side, like the people actually putting these codes on their packaging. There are so many companies that are very far forward on this, and they're getting a lot of, because they already can see the benefit in the near term, right? So I could talk more about that if you want, but it's always good to ground it in. We have dedicated focus on retail POS hardware, like that is just a critical piece of definition that we need to have for the whole thing to blossom out the way we expect.
We have something exciting to share with you, a special podcast discount for our favorite event of the year.
GS1 Connect.
That's right, our annual supply chain focused conference, and this year it's in Las Vegas 2026.
I cannot wait. Reid, how many GS1 Connects have you been to?
I think it's been 7. This year will be 8.
That's awesome. I have been going to Connect before it was called Connect, so I very much love meeting all of our attendees every single year who bring so many great examples from grocery, food service, retail, and healthcare about how they solve supply chain visibility challenges. And in 2026, Las Vegas gives us the perfect excuse for a few puns about how GS1 standards can help you make bold moves that lead to big wins.
Oh, I see where you're going. GS1 Connect is your chance to deal yourself a winning hand in operations with the power of GS1 standards.
Wait, GS1 Connect is also the perfect place to hit the jackpot on connections from the exhibitor floor to the networking tables and forge high-value relationships that pay dividends long after the bright lights fade.
Learning strategies worth betting on for sure, Liz. Hear from trailblazers across industries and walk away with bold insights that help you turn risk into reward.
Okay, I think that's enough puns for the day, but maybe one more. If your supply chain feels like a roll of the dice, GS1 Connect in Las Vegas is your sure bet for success. So mark your calendars for June 9th through 11th and join us at GS1 Connect. It's time to take your supply chain game to the next level. And this year we have great news for anyone ready to plan to attend.
That's right, Liz. We do have an early bird registration is officially open. If you register by March 31st, you can save 10% on your conference pass. Just head to connect.gs1us.org to secure your spot and take advantage of the early bird rate. Whether it's your first time to GS1 Connect or your 12th, like Liz, or more, there's always something new to learn and new people to meet.
Again, the website is connect.gs1.org. Don't forget, register by March 31st to get that 10% early bird savings. See you there.
So Ned, I know you've been talking about this for a couple of years, and we're getting very close to the rubber hitting the road. And I can envision some folks out there that were just hired by a brand or a retailer, and they're tasked with, hey, we want you to get us ready for this Sunrise 2027. How would you advise them? Are there certain focused areas? Anything I think would be helpful right now for some of these folks.
There's 2 parallel pathways. So for a brand or a supplier, whoever's creating a barcode, putting it on the package, using a web URL for engagement with digital link, that's one starting point. And then for the retailer standpoint, it's hardware configuration, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll go through both of those. I think for brands, first 2 steps, let's say, that they really need to take if they're brand new, net new to the whole thing, is to have, as best as possible, the sort of internal knowledge about their business and the way it operates. So it's really, what are we capable of? What do we have today? And how connected are all of the teams that would be needed to work on this moving forward, right? So where do you get your barcodes from today? Do you already have QR codes on your product for consumer engagement or some other use case, right? So Smart Label would be an example of a lot of brands have that existing QR code there. And then it becomes a matter of, all right, who exactly has to be involved? Is it the master data team managing those GTINs? Is it the product packaging team, package engineering team, et cetera? Or a vendor, right? That might be weighing in on that. And do we need to include our brand marketing team as well? If we're linking out to content, right? Master data, all the tangible operational elements of making the packaging work, art, design, printing. And then also we're feeding consumers a digital experience as well. What does that all look like? Does that need to be planned for and accounted for? So what are we capable of? What do we have? Put that team together. And then just making sure, as you're aligning all of this down to one technology, let's say, you have the ability to look at a near-term ROI, if there is one, and then long-term as well. So for brands, a lot of what they really want to do is get to a point where they can put more business critical data in the barcode. So if it's a food product, adding a lot code in there to make traceability much more seamless, adding a serial number in there so they can do much more detailed fine-grained tracking of where their products are. They understand single units versus big pallets or packages. If there's a big business problem related to the identity of the product, where it is, inventory management, aiding recalls, fresh food management, right? Adding that additional data element in the barcode opens up the possibility to correct those. So looking at that long-term vision, here's where we want to go. Here's where we are. Here's the team that we've got. Directly after that, I would always recommend coming to GS1 US and taking advantage of some of the free resources we have. It shows them the barcode types, the syntaxes, a little bit more into the details of what the definition of Sunrise is.
Just a bit,
right? Specifically, we know what we've got. We know where we're going, right? These are the hard requirements. And then you can start to really do the planning to figure out how you're going to get there.
Before you jump over to the retailers, and this is extremely helpful, and I know that our brands are appreciative of this, but for our startups, like these really, really small,
Yes.
they're just getting into it. And what is the recommendation to have a 2D and a 1D on the packaging close together? Or does it not matter? You can have it on separate sides, because when you go to scan it, you could scan both. And, people are asking these questions out there. So what's our stance on that? Because let's be candid. It's taken 50 years for the 1D to have like such an immersion that we take it for granted now. But there's plenty of bodegas and convenience stores that still don't scan them. And so when we move over to Sunrise 2027, it's the start. It doesn't mean that January 1st, 2027, every retailer is accepting 2D barcodes. So you're going to have both. So maybe a little advice for some of our startups on that side.
One of those first pieces of fundamental education, right? So this is always in like the first conversation that we would have with a brand, the sort of capital R requirement for brands, if you look at it that way, is to have that 2D code and the 1D code located together, right? There's very specific rules around this. So high level, if you put a dot in the middle of your UPC barcode and you draw a 2-inch circle, the whole 2D should fit inside of that. So it should be within a 2-inch radius of the center of the UPC, right? It's a little better when you see the visual on the slide and everything. It's in all of our documentation, but that's the big chunk of it. And the reason for that, again, all the industry work we've done, the technology providers, the retailers, et cetera, the way those scanning systems work is basically like a digital camera. It just snaps hundreds of pictures. And as that product's moving over a checkout, you want both barcodes caught in that single frame. And then the scanner knows I'm seeing 2 barcodes on one product, not 2 separate products, right? Like the nightmare scenario for everyone is I'm trying to buy a can of Coke and I get charged twice, right? Or a case of whatever the case may be. So if they were to put the UPC on the bottom and the QR code on the side, you're going to just imagine self-checkout, something's going wrong. I heard 2 beeps. What's going on? I need an associate to take this, right? All that confusion we want to avoid. But that's the importance of having those barcodes very close together within a specific measurement, because that has been tested thoroughly with all the major manufacturers, all the scanning hardware, et cetera. So that's a key piece of it. And if you're talking about startups, small businesses, solopreneurs, like the micro businesses and stuff, it is absolutely critical that they have good partners. So tech providers, solution providers, right? You can do all of this by yourself for free, right? But leveraging people that have this knowledge to be able to aid in this journey is critically important. So advice for everyone is, as you're planning, bring your vendors, your technology providers into the conversation. Ask about their capabilities, ask about their knowledge, so that you know who in your network can support you as you're moving forward.
Now let's transition. Let's take it from a retailer side. What advice do you have for retailers if they're getting started here on the 2D journey?
One of the biggest questions that we get from retailers is, are they going to have to buy new equipment, right? Is there going to be a capital expense? Do I need to upgrade my entire enterprise fleet of scanning hardware, POS systems, right? And so the first question is really, is the hardware they have out in the field capable of reading a 2D code. So do an audit, do an assessment, talk with your operations teams. What are the make and model numbers of what you have out there? And then checking to see that they are optically based, right? They're image-based scanners, just so that you know for sure they have a 2D reading capability in the first place. If it's older equipment and it is laser-based, non-optical, that's the scenario where you may need to do upgrades. So if that's the case, that is the first starting point for sure. Making sure everything is optical. And if that requires purchasing, that's, let's say, step one. And then after that, it is getting in touch with your solution providers, the hardware manufacturers, your reps, your techs at those companies, and talking about how capable or what complexity there might be in the configuration to get that stuff ready to read 2D. From our standpoint at GS1, we have a lot of documentation on all of what those requirements are, the barcode types, the read rates, all of that, and a lot of really good public information from our global office as well on existing hardware manufacturers and their models and what capabilities they already have, which is all attested directly from those manufacturers. So there's a lot of information on there about how to do this right, but that's the first step. What do you have in the field? Do the audit. What are the capabilities we've got? And then what is it going to take to get us live with the next steps?
And so none of this sounds like it's a fast process, either from a brand, a retailer, and I'm assuming that there's very important conversations that they need to have together, because if a brand is putting a 2D barcode, they may want to understand if their retailer is capable of reading that. And so talk to us a little bit about why get started now versus waiting until later in 2026 or early 2027, especially as there are so many partners, including us, that are available to help. But talk to us a little bit about why start now and interoperability of how these all kind of play together.
One of the hardest parts of this whole initiative, either brand or retailer, doesn't matter. Whenever we talk to any of these companies, one of the hardest parts is just really aligning internally that entire team that needs to work on this, like getting the business priority that this is something that should be worked on. How does this work with other activities we're already doing, whether we're doing master data cleanup or we're doing package redesign or we're doing digitization, whatever. How does this fit into there? Because it is a long-term plan, right? So for a brand, we already have a QR code. We've got a UPC. We're just changing the data in a QR. At a high level, that's it, really, realistically. But that may be one product in one brand that they own across, thousands or tens of thousands of SKUs. So how is that going to roll out? Where do we start? What are the worst ones? Like very, very small pieces of packaging where there isn't a lot of room to move things around. So it's how long will this take for us to define a starting point, make sure everything is working, get some data back from retailers, get some feedback on our production processes, maybe our internal pitches, because it is going to be a roll across every product, across every brand in that whole portfolio. So that is a big sort of multi-year project to look at. So that's why, like I said, assessment of capabilities, putting a team together, putting a plan in place, that's really a good starting point because it is going to take business priority and it is going to take time. And from the retailer standpoint, it's very similar. From my experience, not the most complex configuration change to make, like pushing the config file to the hardware, that's seconds. But it is what are all of the impacts this is going to have across our enterprise, right? We are talking about like what I said, the moment the product is sold. So it's the critical moment of customer interaction, right? Scanning it, getting the price, and then getting the customer on their way. And once you start to mess with that just core foundation of the whole enterprise, there's just a lot of understanding of any potential risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So starting today, getting the requirements, looking at the feasibility of your tech, knowing what you're going into, laying out the right plan that works for the business. That's why you really want to start today. Is you may not know how long that plan has to go based on other priorities. So it's better to start today, understand it fundamentally, and then plan for success in the long term.
You state that it's going to be multiple years. We all know that. But I think just one human being's, opinion is that you're not going to have a 50-year runway. When we look at the speed of digitization and what's kind of happening, like when you look at ChatGPT and how it went from like zero usage to 2 years dominating a marketplace. When you look at TikTok being the number one marketing platform in 18 months, Like the record player had an 80-year run before it was challenged. Then the cassette tapes had a 20-year run before they were challenged. Then CDs had an 8-year run, and MP3s came along, and then MP3s were taken out. And it was just like, it all got better. But when it got better faster. The adoption is faster. And so if you think like, like they're gonna accept 2D and 1D for a long time, no doubt about it's going to be multiple years. My bet is going to be a lot less than 50.
I totally agree with you. But one way to look at this is being proactive, like sort of hearing the call for this, understanding that this is a global direction that is essentially, I kind of said before, the new like root of identity for this product in the supply chain. So you have the UPC, you have 12 numbers, that's the core identity. A QR code with a web domain in it that also has that digital identity, that's just the new foundation, realistically, that opens up all the tech, all the future tech that we really need to be using. To your point, like a lot of brands that are a little hesitant about the risk, they're like, well, I don't really have to start. It's not a mandate from GS1. It's not an FDA regulation. There's no GS1 police force that's going to go out and knock on their door and check their barcodes, whatever that is, right? But if the day that they may get a supplier mandate dropped on their desk or like a Dear Supplier letter from a major retailer, they'll probably get maybe 2 years, maybe 2.5 years to figure out, do I have the right digital marketing team? Do they know who my product, like to do all of that additional work that I said before, doing that in a 2-year time frame under duress, under pressure with all of the other things going on to prioritize. That's a situation we want to try to help people avoid, right? It can be done in a very short order. Planning for success is the way to go, but there are going to be pressures coming at them from retailers or from regulations that are going to set the timeline for people if they don't adopt it themselves.
All right. Well, we're running out of time. We're gone down to our last 2 questions. I'll go first. Cool. We asked this of all of our guests. And speaking of tech, we would really love to know what's your favorite tech that you're using right now, whether it's professionally or personally. What's your favorite tech?
This is going to be potentially controversial. The technology today that I am getting by far the most benefit from, that I'm using the most frequently, is actually the latest version of Google Gemini, Google's AI. That is, all right. I've used the whole. I've tried them all. We know each other. You guys know me. Yeah. You guys know me. For what I need, an extra set of brains and an extra set of text for, it's plugged into Google Flights. It works with my calendar and email. It is plugged into that whole ecosystem. Its writing is just I can make it write like me, I guess is another way to put it. It just works very well from what I expect from sort of an AI companion.
Last question. What is something new that you would like to learn about in the future?
One thing that I'm always fascinated by, I work with like production systems and big data, an enterprise level, moving parts and things like that. But what has always fascinated me was how people and employees fit into that whole equation, right? I know data points of ships moving in and out of harbors and deliveries and packages and all this stuff, but people are the ones making that happen. So the thing that's always so fascinating to me is like the human brain, all of how thinking works, et cetera. And one thing that's always stood out to me is that consciousness, right? So that we all take for granted, doesn't have a scientific definition. They can't put their finger on it and point to it. There's no particle or measurement of it. It's somewhere just a part of the whole. So that's always something I want to learn more about. Like, how do we work? How do we create all of this stuff? How do we eat lasagna and change it into calculus in our brain, right? That's always a topic that'll get my interest at a happy hour. Yeah.
You went deep here real fast.
Real fast. Again, I will talk to you in a couple weeks.
Great question. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that and everything else. 2D barcodes is something that we all find fascinating internally at GS1 US, and as consumers, really, and as people learning about this and all the different unlocks has been great. How 2027 is really next year. So organizations wouldn't wait to get started. Put together your internal team, start talking about what needs to be done. And we will have you back post 2027 so that we can get all the goods and all that information. But thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
And thank you, Ned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.